Okay, we are now prepared to move on into the next and final step of what we're doing. I believe this is the 7th tutorial for the assignment for GDQ ICT Honors due on April 15. We have already pulled in the data. We have put it into a nice table. We have translated it into Sheep, and now we are on step number 4, and we are going to make use of this API right here. It's not really an API. I'll just give you a hint. All I did was create a bunch of pages that had the text that we wanted in there. But by accessing this, www.qdk.org/pmwiki/index.php, notice I've changed this. If you copied it from before, make sure you get the correct one. And then question mark n equals alb, A-L-B, all uppercase, dot book name, number, dash, number. The first number is the chapter, the second number is the verse, and then ampersand, that's the shift 7, action equals source. So let's make sure if that works. We're going to come over here, open up a new tab, and go to John 13:34, and sure enough, that looks very effective if you ask me. So you'll notice that these ampersand EUML semicolon, that is how it is the proper way to put in accented marks. So that's an E with the 2 dots above it. And that is how it will show up here, but when we actually show it on our screen, it will show up properly. Just trust me on that one. All right? So that seems to be working. Now we need to get our format into something that works. So let's go back to our process.php, down to where we are doing this. We echo, first of all, the number, you'll recall. Then we echo the book name. And now we're going to add a new cell into our table. So we add a new TD with a closed TD. But instead of the book name here, we're going to have to get some values. We're going to use the function file get contents. Is that what it is? Yeah, file get contents. And file get contents can also get a URL. So we're going to say $URL equals, and then put it in quotes here, and then take what I just copied and pasted from the other one here. So the URL is here, but first of all, we have to get in the reference. This reference has to be exact, has to be the book of the Bible, followed by a 1-3 or the chapter dash verse. So CF4, and we're going to call it new ref. Now we have to get a value for new ref in here, so we're going to say new ref equals preg replace. No, we can just do a simple stir replace, I think, can't we? Yeah. Okay, we got to get rid of all spaces, and we have to get rid of a colon, or change a colon into a dash, because we have a value that looks like this. M2 equals John 3:16, and we need to change this space into nothing. We need to change this colon into a dash. So we're going to find the space and the colon, and we're going to replace it with nothing and a dash. We're going to do that on the $M2 value, and then we're going to put that into the new ref. Now, almost invariably when I run things like this, I find that it doesn't work the first time, so I'm just going to automatically give myself a little debug line here, a little trace statement that says URL equals $URL, and then I am going to go ahead and try doing what it is I want to do. Verse equals file get contents $URL, and then we're going to echo that verse. Notice we're already in between the TD up here and the TD, the closed TD down here. So we get the file, we do this, and it's going to be a little bit more, this debug's going to be a little bit weird because it's going to be right in the middle of it, but let's see what we can come up with. Alright, so we'll save it off. and I'm totally expecting there to be problems, but let's put it through and see what we can come up with. I'm also expecting this to happen very slowly. Why is it happening very slowly? Because it's got to look up 51 separate verses, one after another, in order to come back with what it is that we're expecting. If this takes too long, and it looks like it is taking too long, I'm probably not going to keep on trying it for my tests, because it's going to just take too long for my testing. This is actually the place where I'm at a disadvantage, where I'm here on my local host. If I were doing it out on the internet, you would find it would go much more quickly, because the sending of the request and the receiving of the data back goes much more quickly out on the internet. So this is taking a long time. I'm going to go ahead and pause this and come back in a minute. Still waiting. I just thought I'd check back in with you and point out that we're still waiting. This is about a minute and a half afterwards. I think we're going to have to come up with another solution. And it finally came back. I'm going to guess we took about, I don't know, 2.5 minutes to go through that. So I'm certainly not going to keep going on that. But let's see what we've got here. I can see that my debug statement telling me the URL came up almost exactly what I expected. That worked very nicely, and it actually worked. It came back and gave me the text of the verse right here. So that looked like it worked very well. Let's go on glancing down fairly quickly here. Everything is looking nice. Everything's looking nice. We get to 1 Corinthians 11:33, and it's not working. Why is it not working? It's not working because in the API expects the digit 1 to be representative of the fact that it is 1 Corinthians, and it expects the digit 2 instead of 2 Corinthians down here. So it's not expecting II Corinthians, it's expecting 2 Corinthians. So let's go back and see if we can fix that. And because it happens that none of our book names start with or have a capital I in them, we can be a little bit lazy here. Under normal circumstances, I would have to go to a regular expression to anchor this and say only an I at the beginning. But, I'm going to go ahead and introduce an error just so we can see why it's an error. So I'm going to replace I with 1 and II with 2. See how that works? Let's see what happens now. But I've got to figure out a different way to do this faster. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, that worked an awful lot better. I just went ahead and pulled all of my PMWiki verses down onto my local host, and then it only took about 15 seconds for me to do that. All that was required for me to change that in my code. You'll notice I kept my previous URL here because I knew I'd be switching back to it eventually, but just for testing purposes, I have changed www.qdk.org, I've changed it to localhost, and then rather than the index.php, my local thing here says pmwiki.php. So I just had to make a couple of changes there, and now you'll see that 2 Corinthians, 1 Corinthians came out nicely here, and 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, however, did not work. And you'll see that it said 1 Corinthians 13:12. Why would that be? Why did it change II Corinthians into 1 Corinthians? Let's go back and look at the thing, and this is the bug that I told you that I had interrupted or introduced. I said replace all occurrences of space with blank. I'll put this on the next line so it's easier. If we line these up so you can see what everything is going here, then you can see that all occurrences of space are being replaced with nothing. All occurrences of colon are being spaced with dash. All occurrences of I are being replaced with 1. All occurrences of II are being replaced with 2. However, it does this in order. And so when you have a value like this, what's it going to do? First of all, it's going to take all the spaces and replace them with quotes, with nothing. Then it's going to take the colon and replace it with a dash. What was it? It's 2 Corinthians 13:12. So it replaced all the spaces with nothing. Then it replaces the colon with a dash. Then what's the next thing we told it to do? Replace all capital I's with a 1. Do you see any capital I up here? Sure do. Replace it with a 1, replace it with a 1. Well, that's not what we wanted at all. We wanted that to become a 2. That's what we said right here. We said change the i's into 2's. Well, you have to replace I with 2 before you replace I with 1, because I is a substring of II. So let's go ahead and change this. And let's just do this like so. And I think that will cover it. And let's see what we've got here. This takes us about 15 seconds. So we'll just leave it for a second. Won't kill you, I don't guess. And if I was doing this, if I was going to have to do an awful lot of debugging, then probably what I would do is I would shorten my data file, and I would make a secondary data file that only had the data that was actually causing my problems. All right, we came back, and you can see that 2 Corinthians 13:12 came in nicely here. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, okay, 1 Thessalonians, and we don't have any 2 Thessalonians, but that all seems to be working fine. We've all got a debug statement on every line. 1 Peter came through, 1 John, 2 John, everything seems to have come through nicely. The last thing that we need to do is to get rid of our debug statement there, and then redo it again. And while that's going to come up, I'm going to go back and make sure that we've done everything we were supposed to do in step number 4. Create a simple API which gets the Albanian text for the verses from a website. You'll get the text for John 13:34 from this address, which I changed a little bit. Get the output of that page and put it in as a third column in your table. So our first column here is the number. The second column is the reference in Albanian. And the third column is the text in Albanian. It looks to me like we have completed step number 4, and we are now ready to move on to the last and final step that we have. I'll go ahead and halt here, and you can tune in to the next step in the tutorial.